Hello and welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today we're talking about what to do if your husband doesn't earn enough. I'm going to share 5 steps to inspire him to become more prosperous. And my guest, Shelly, was dreadfully unhappy and found herself thinking of leaving her angry, negative, and constantly complaining husband. There had to be more to life than having the same arguments about money, his job, and the kids. She longed to be with someone who she felt connected to and could laugh with. Today, that someone is her husband, the same one. She's going to describe the radical steps she took to turn her relationship around completely. Then I'll be giving out the award for the worst relationship advice of the week, which is typically thought of as a way to be self-respecting, but it's a complete psych. You will not feel respected if you follow this advice. Quite the opposite. All that is coming up, but first, let's talk about what to do if your husband doesn't make enough money. Just think, by the time you're done listening to this podcast, you'll know how to inspire your husband to be more prosperous. What I'm going to share with you is powerful, whether he's out of work or retired or just under earning, but it's not at all obvious. In fact, it's completely counterintuitive. At least it was for me. And it has been for many of the women I've worked with. It took me years to figure this out. And even when I did, it was very hard to believe. But now that I've seen it work, not just in my own marriage, but in thousands of marriages all over the world, I cannot deny that it's ridiculously effective. The results I see are husbands starting businesses, growing their businesses, getting promotions, 3 in 1 year sometimes, or winning the sales contests and getting raises. And it was all because their wives took this scary but enormously gratifying approach. So here's step number 1. Stop talking about it. If you're anything like me, you've tried telling your husband that he needs to make more money or that things are tight or that you think he's capable of making more. Or you've suggested things he could do to get more income or job changes he should consider. Or you've asked him if he's ever thought about going back to school. You've tried being encouraging about it. And as you already know, none of that works. In fact, just like jealousy, it has the opposite effect, which I'll explain. First, my husband made less, and then he made nothing as I continuously hinted, reminded, nagged, and urged him to find a way to earn more income. It all sounded like complaining and criticism to him. That's because it was. Trying to explain or show him how to make more money is the same as saying, you're not very capable. And that is a sure way to create a lot of resentment and tension in your relationship. So the first thing to consider is not talking about how you want him to earn more. He already knows anyway. Step number 2, focus on what you have, not what you don't have. Wanting my husband to make more money was actually a colossal distraction from another problem I had, which was that I worried about money a lot. And by a lot, I mean, it was like my hobby. I might as well have subscribed to Financial Fear Weekly or Debt and Disaster Daily. Of course, it's not that fun to think about all the ways that financial disaster might strike, but that didn't stop me. My fantasy was that my husband would make more money and that would put an end to my unfulfilling pastime. You know, if we had a certain amount in the bank or we paid off all the debt or if we had a particular income, then and only then did I believe that I would stop fretting. I could stop fretting. And that was my logic, but it turned out to be backward. I had feelings of financial insecurity because I focused on financial insecurity. And what you focus on increases. And I was focused on what I didn't have, so I never had enough. That's just how life works. And the only person who could change that was me. I had focused on how much I lacked, which made me lack more. And then I wanted my husband to defeat the laws of the universe by somehow making me feel abundant. Simply isn't possible. There's plenty of money in the world, but there was never going to be very much in my world because of how I thought. I thought my husband would fix me by providing more, even as I stifled that possibility with my incessant worrying. What actually fixed me was the only thing that could fix me, which was making a different choice about what I focused on. Choosing a policy of focusing on what I had instead of what I didn't have by making a daily gratitude list for all the abundance I was enjoying in the moment was a great first step, and I highly recommend it. And you might notice as you're making your list that you write something like, I have food in the fridge. And then the next thought is, but we won't pretty soon if we don't get some more money. That's okay. That's going to happen at first. Just let those thoughts fly by and stay focused on what you have. That's the key. Step number 3 is to decide to trust your man. Besides what I was saying to my husband about how he needed to please find some way to bring some more money home, I didn't trust him to handle our family finances. I felt I should do them, as I was positive that I was much better at doing them than he is. Except that I was wrong. He handles them now, and it's much better for us, both financially and in terms of the connection in our marriage. Lots of things got better when I decided to hand over that chore and demonstrate through my actions that I trusted him to do well. People tend to rise to your expectations. My husband definitely grew and felt the full weight of the responsibility for our finances and got the inspiration to start a successful business. And I've seen the same thing happen for lots of other couples where the wife found her faith instead of acting on her fear. I know there are probably dozens of reasons it doesn't seem like a good idea to let your husband handle the finances. There were for me too. But mostly, I was just used to being afraid that we would run out of money. Master Coach Kathy on our campus was the CFO for a $40 million private school, and it took her 5 years to take this leap. But when she finally did, her husband stepped up and he doubled his business, and then she quit her job and went back to school, and then he bought her a brand new house. So what would happen if you trusted your husband to handle the finances? Number 4, honor your desires. So here's a critical element of this approach that some women skip, but that's like leaving the cream cheese out of the cheesecake. You know, if you know money is tight, you may have a tendency to dial back your desires, to squish them down so they go away. But they bubble up and you tell them to get lost because you think there's no money for that. And that never works. All you're doing is cheating yourself out of the things your heart yearns for, and you're also cheating your husband out of the opportunity to provide them for you. Instead, consider honoring those desires by stating them to yourself and to him. Maybe you want a vacation or a bigger house or a newer car. Maybe you want to cut back on your work hours or you want to buy some new clothes. Whatever it is, the more you acknowledge them to yourself and to him, the more inspired he'll be to want to get them for you. And that's because what motivates and inspires husbands more than just about anything is being able to make their wives happy. I know it may not seem like that at your house right now, but keep in mind that he may be defending himself from your inadvertent criticism. I know you didn't mean to demoralize him, but that's what happens when you encourage him to make more money. Once he sees that you think he's smart and capable again, that morale will improve, and then his drive to please you will be back in full swing. That's why it's so important to know that what you yearn for, and also to express it to yourself and to others, is the way to create more prosperity. Not that you're expecting anything, you're just hoping. You're just going to allow those delightful things into your life. Step number 5, express your gratitude to him. Your husband contributes to making your life more abundant and easier every day. I know it may not seem like he does, may not seem like he does enough, but he does do some. And that's what you want to focus on, because the next step is to appreciate him. Making your list of things that you're grateful for, remember step number 2, that's going to serve as a way to keep your focus on what you want to increase. And it will also help you express your appreciation. His contribution may be really tiny. Maybe all you can come up with is that he made the coffee or he took out the trash. Maybe he drove one of the kids somewhere, or maybe he picked up the cereal at the store. Those are all good things to appreciate about him. Whatever he contributes to the family financially is also worth appreciating because what you focus on increases. So for the sake of your family's prosperity, consider experimenting with these 5 steps in your relationship to see what emerges. You might be surprised how rich you feel. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. Dreadfully unhappy and desperate for more, Shelly found herself thinking of leaving her angry, negative, and constantly complaining husband just as the kids were leaving the nest. She felt there had to be more to life than having the same arguments about money, his job, and the kids repeatedly. So many weekends went up in flames. She longed to be with someone who she felt connected to and could laugh with, someone who wasn't angry all the time. Now that someone is her husband, the same one. She's going to describe the radical steps she took to turn her relationship around. Shelly, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thanks for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, Laura, and it's great to be here.
Start by telling us about these bad old days.
Oh, well, so about 7 years ago, and as I look back, that was just a really dark time for me and just some really hard, difficult days. My kids were on their way out of the house, and I was just experiencing this emotional void, just real emptiness. And particularly, I was feeling that emptiness in regards to my marriage. I was just longing for so much more in my marriage. And I think what led up to that is, my husband previously was in the military, busy with his career. We had decided to homeschool my kids, or our kids. And so I was just throwing myself into that and their church activities, their sports activities, and now they're leaving. And I have this void in my life, and the emptiness of my marriage is just staring me in the face. And then at that time too, there was just so much drama and stress in our lives. Just so many things kept happening. And my husband was really, really unhappy about how his career was progressing. He was frustrated. He would daily complain about his job and just dump all this on me every day after work. And then, he was angry with how things were, what would happen to him on the job, and he wasn't doing what he wanted to do. And then as our kids were leaving the house, there was some kid drama around college and their relationships with people or their lack of relationships with people. My daughter would call me up crying on the phone because of not having friends. And I mean, it just was hard. And my husband would get frustrated with that. He would be frustrated that they weren't doing what he thought they should be doing. And he would get angry and he would complain about that as well. And so I had that coming at me. And then too, we had just all these expensive house things come up. We had flooding in our house and water leaks and thousands of dollars this was costing us, and car issues, and the computer would always break down at the most inopportune time, and that would cause stress. And my husband was frustrated, and he was complaining about all these things happening, and he didn't like the way some of it was getting handled, so he was angry about that. And then in the midst of this, so often we were just at odds with each other because of this, and we'd have these very tense, angry conversations about the money and our kids and his job. And I didn't always agree with his take on things, and he didn't always like the way I responded to situations. And I don't know. So, I mean, lots of times whole weekends would just get blown up, and because of something I said or did, and we'd have then this silence, and it would take days to get over. And gosh, Lord, I hated it. I just hated it. It was just so tense and just all this conflict. And I just found myself married to this very angry, frustrated, unhappy man. And then, so I wasn't happy. I just,
Exhausting.
It was exhausting.
And so were these conversations, were they more like fights where you're both kind of going at it? Or was it more like he was just unloading on you? Like, how would you characterize those?
It was a lot of unloading. But then like he would come home and tell me about his work. And so I would jump in and tell him, give him advice, or I would tell him what I thought of the situation, or I'd question what he was doing at work, if that was a good idea. And so that just inflamed things all the more. And he'd get upset with me and didn't appreciate what I was saying about that. And lots of times the things with the kids, I would defend them and take their side. And so, yeah. So
looking back, you've got some insights about why.
I know I do have some insights at the time. Yeah.
Right. But at the time you didn't. At the time you didn't. And you just thought you were, and you just thought you were living with someone who was miserable, negative, and always angry.
And and two, I just felt like, I had a right to express my opinion, in that,
of course.
I mean, I should be able to say what I think about this.
Yes, you should.
That's what I was doing. Exactly.
Right. You're going to help him.
I was going to help him.
Was there a moment? So you started thinking, gosh, it'd be nice to get out of this. I mean, who wouldn't think that, right?
Exactly. I mean, I remember driving down the road and just thinking, I couldn't remember the last time I felt happy. And I normally I love to laugh. I'm lighthearted. That's who I am. But I mean, during this time, it was just so much negativity and so much tension and so much drama. And I was not happy. And I just couldn't remember when I ever felt happy. And mentally, I was just in a really bad place. I was very critical. I just knew he was the problem. He needed to change, And I would daydream about what it would be like to be with someone that, I felt connected to, that I could laugh with, that I could have fun with. And one day I remember I was doing a workout video and I was just going through the motions, but in my head, I was making plans to leave. I thought, I just can't do this anymore. Maybe if I left, that would get his attention. I'm just so unhappy. So,
So was there a moment when you just said, I can't go on like this?
Yeah, there was, I was trying to make things better and, trying to have some fun in the midst of all this yuck. So I had planned this picnic to a park. We live near the Potomac River, and there's this park and they have eagle lookouts, and we enjoy watching eagles. And so I planned this day. It was early spring. We're going to go there. I packed a lunch. We're going to do some hiking, and we're going to, see if we could spot some eagles. And as we were hiking through the woods, my husband started talking about, and he had retired from the military by this time. He was talking about a job that he wanted to apply for in Blacksburg. And we had just recently moved up here to Northern Virginia, hadn't been living here this long. And I kind of wanted to put down roots because, in the military, we're always moving. So I was ready to stay somewhere. And now he's talking about moving. And I just was like, you've got to be kidding. And so I jumped in. I said, I don't think I just didn't like the idea. I didn't want to move, and, just told him how I felt. Well, that didn't go over well at all. And he was very frustrated, said I didn't have an open mind. Why can't I be open to different ideas? He was excited about this job. So, I mean, things just went downhill from there. And so the day ended where he's on one end of the park bench, just his arms crossed in front of him, just very stiff. And I'm at the other end of the park bench, and I've just got tears in my eyes. And there's just this thick wall of silence between us. And as I was sitting there, I just thought, is this marriage going to make it? I mean, I just can't go on like this. We can't even go out and have a good day together. And we're fighting. It's tense and it's conflict. And so I just knew that something had to change, because this is not what I wanted that day to be.
So was so much for your happy day watching eagles, right?
Yeah.
Didn't work out.
No.
What were you doing to try to fix the marriage?
Oh gosh, Laura, I tried a lot of things. First of all, I was convinced that he was the one that needed to change, and I was going to set out to fix him and change him, and try as I might. And believe me, I tried. He wasn't changing. And I read so many marriage books, and I took classes at our church, marriage classes at our church. And Oh gosh, I planned, the date nights that you're supposed to have. So I planned those, and I went online and I found conversation starters so that we could talk about something other than his job, and talk about something fun. I did that. And foolishly, I initiated some of those State of the Union conversations. Oh my gosh, that was a mistake. I mean, those just did not end well. And I ended up just bruised and battered after those. And trying to talk about it just didn't get me anywhere. And, some of it helped a little bit, but a lot of it was met with just a lot of resistance. And then that caused even more conflict and tension. So it just wasn't getting me what I wanted. And he wasn't changing. After all that, he still wasn't changing. So, yeah.
It's fun because we're both kind of laughing about, I think it's the laugh of recognition, right? Because
Yes.
I did the same thing as you about what happened, but something did happen because you're, so what happened? What happened then?
Well, so one day, I don't know if the clue bird landed on me or if I read something, I don't know. But one day I realized.
I did not know there was a clue bird.
Yeah,
so he landed on you. Okay,
he landed on my head and he said, Shelly, the only person you can change is yourself. And I thought, duh, and I didn't realize it before. I've been so hard trying to change him. And the only person I had control over to change was myself. And so that was huge for me just to realize. But the problem was I didn't really know what I needed to change because I thought I was doing everything right. I was trying all these things and reading all these books. And so how did I need to change? And then one day I was listening to a podcast, a marriage podcast. And lo and behold, who should be on the podcast but Laura Doyle? And she was being interviewed on this podcast. And I thought, wow. And you were so happy. I was like, this woman's happy. I want to be happy like she's happy. And so I got your book and I read your book. And oh my gosh, I just so identified with everything that was in there. And now I knew what I needed to change. It was plain as day. I thought I've done this, and now I need to know what I know what I need to change. So it was huge. And the two things that really jumped out at me in your book, well, everything did, but the two things that just really addressed where I was at that moment was the respect and relinquishing control. Just, hit me right between the eyes. And, I knew respect was important, but I just didn't really understand what that looked like. I don't think I had a real good grasp of what that meant or what that looked like for a man is what I think where I was really falling short. And two, the book just revealed to me just how disrespectful I had been. And I just didn't have a clue. I regularly offered my opinions about his work. I told him how he should handle things. Again, like I mentioned before, I questioned about, how he handled things at his job. I was very quick to shoot down his ideas and his thoughts. I sought to control how he dealt with our kids and their problems because I wanted to avoid drama. So I just got myself right in there and tried to do what I thought was best. And then a big thing for me was the finances. That has always been an issue for us throughout our whole marriage. And just how controlling I was about how money was spent and how much was spent. And so those were just really revealing to me and was a wake-up call. And I guess, too, what I realized from reading your book, and I had no idea, is just how fearful I was and how that fear played out and caused me to be disrespectful and controlling. And, I was fearful about him losing his job. And I was fearful that I'd have to move somewhere that I didn't want to. And I was fearful, to Blacksburg, and fearful about, the drama with our kids and not handling it the way I thought was best. And money, big money fears, I was very fearful about the money. And your phrase, choose faith over fear, that was just so powerful for me and just made such a difference. So, the changes I started to make was I started to choose faith over fear, and I started to apologize for being disrespectful. I remember one conversation that got really heated about our kids, and he was just venting and blowing off steam about what was going on. And I didn't know, or this was after I'd read your book. And so I realized that that was a trigger for me, or anything to do with the kids was bait. And so in this conversation, I took the bait, and I started to defend the kids. And then I caught myself and I realized what I had done. And so I thought, so then I apologized right then. I said, I need to apologize for being disrespectful. I shouldn't have just said that, because I was defending them and coming up against what he was saying. And I could just feel the tension calm down and start to dissipate. So the conversation continued, and gosh, Laura, if I didn't do it again, I took the bait again. And so I said something, but I caught myself again, and I was like, oh. And so I apologized a second time. I'm sorry for being disrespectful. I shouldn't have said that. Well, after that, I was like, I am not going to apologize a third time in this conversation. So I just slapped on the duct tape and, said, I hear you, and just heard him, listen to him, and just, heard him out. And we walked away from that conversation. The tension came down, it became calm, and the intimacy was intact. So I don't know, I just was like, wow, this is great. And so, just starting to be respectful and say, I hear you, when he'd come home and tell me about his job, and not give the advice and not offer the opinions, and relinquishing control of his parenting. And, so often I would get in the middle. And so I just really tried hard to stay out and let him handle whatever grievances he had with the kids, let him handle those on his own and deal with that. That was hard, but, I really worked at doing that. And then again, choosing faith over fear when it came to the finances was a big one for me. And just saying whatever you think and trusting him to decide how we spend our money.
So were you handling the finances prior to?
Yeah, I was really involved with the finances. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
very
then
much.
And then so how did that change, or what did you do differently?
Well, I when we would sit down and talk money, I would be very much like, well, we should spend money on this and we need money for that. And I just pulled back and just said, okay, so what do you think? What do we want to spend on this month? And I let him decide how much we were going to spend and put those amounts in the budget. And then at least then I knew what he wanted to spend, and then live within those budget amounts. And when he said he wanted to go out to dinner, because I used to always push back on that, thinking, oh, we don't need to be spending that money, and I can just make dinner at home. And I just stopped when he said he wanted to go out. I was like, okay, let's go out to eat. And sometimes that was hard for me, but I just thought, I've got to choose faith over fear, and just, if he wants to go out to eat, we're going to go out to eat, and that's what we're going to do.
So your fear was that you were going to spend too much money going out.
Yeah, right. Spend too much money.
And you'd go into debt, or what would you say the fear is?
Yeah, I think just, not having enough to cover expenses, and I do not like debt, and so I just didn't want to be having to have credit card debt, and it was just those kinds of things that were causing me to be fearful.
Did you feel a little, did you ever feel like a doormat? I mean, here you're not giving your opinion about his job, and you're trying to stay out of his relationship with the kids, and now you're saying whatever you think about money. I mean, what about Shelly's mind being on these conversations? How was that for you?
Well, at times that was really hard, because like I said, I thought, so often, well, I have a right to my opinion, and I ought to be able to express my opinion and have an input as to how things go.
Right.
And so that was really hard for me. But the amazing thing is, okay, so we had that disagreement about moving to Blacksburg and him trying to take that job. So he came along, and there was another job prospect, and this one was in Richmond, which is an hour and a half from here, but would require a move. And I wasn't excited about, moving to Richmond. But this time I just thought, okay, I'm going to choose faith over fear. If I'm meant to go to Richmond, I guess I'll go to Richmond, and just surrender that. And I didn't say anything to him about it. And I just let him talk and I listened. And so he was talking about this over several days. And then one day he came in and I was making breakfast and I'm standing at the stove making scrambled eggs. He comes in and he starts talking to me about this job opportunity in Richmond and how he had been working with a recruiter and all of this. So I just, I'm like, okay, I hear you and and, just nodding my head. Well, Laura, he was standing there and within that conversation, just talking to himself, he talked himself out of applying for that job and going down there. And so I was like, whoa, it's just like, this is amazing, no conflict, no tension. And I got what I wanted, so how does that happen? It's just weird. I just couldn't believe it. I ended up getting what I wanted. So I thought, well, maybe I don't need to express my opinion all the time. And then too, I love how you just say express your desires. And I've learned how to do that. And that just goes so much better than being negative about, oh, we shouldn't move to this place or whatever. So once I saw how this works and that how I can get what, I don't know, I can have what I want without having to go through all the hassle and the tension and conflict. So then it wasn't such a big deal anymore to me to express my opinion. And I didn't really feel like a doormat because a lot of times I was getting what I wanted. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but that was the dynamic that was going on.
Well, I love it. Well, let's go back to the finances for a second. So what's happened with that? So you've let go of a lot of the control about that. And how has that impacted your family's finances? I mean, is there debt now or how's that working?
Talk about needless emotional turmoil or needless emotional worry, right? I used to just really push back on money that he wanted to spend. I think of a situation where he wanted to buy some trail bikes and he wanted to buy these for the two of us to go out and have fun together. And we had already had bikes and I thought, we don't need new trail bikes. We already have bikes. I'm happy with these bikes. And so we had, one of our tense money conversations where I was pushing back and he was frustrated. And I finally gave in, said, okay, because it was going to be $1,000 to buy these bikes. And I was just like, that's a lot of money to spend on bikes when we already have bikes. And, we went ahead and got the bikes. We didn't go bankrupt. We didn't miss a mortgage payment. We still were able to go out and eat. And you know what? I love that bike. I love that bike that he bought me. It's great. And and he, we go biking together. And I guess too, okay, back to his job thing and just choosing faith over fear when it came to his job. He came to me and he said he wanted to quit his job. He was so frustrated. And, we're a one-income family. So, the red flags could have been going off big time for me. Like, what are you thinking? Your income is the only income that we have. But I had grown so much in choosing faith over fear and had practiced that so much that when he said that to me, I was able to say whatever you think and be peaceful about it and not worry, which was just amazing, just huge. And he did quit his job. But he got another job making more money. And so, so as far as the money thing, and Laura, since then, he just continues to make more money. And so I don't need to worry. It's just crazy. I don't really need to worry about the money anymore because we have plenty. Yeah. And since he's been handling it, it's been great.
That is crazy. So you backing. Okay. And how did he respond when you just said, oh, you want to quit your job? Whatever you think. Like,
he knew.
It was different, right?
It was different. And I guess the thing that best illustrates that is at one point he was looking at trucks. That's a big money ticket item. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to relinquish control here and I'm going to trust him and whatever you think. And my husband is a car guy, so he loves to be on the internet looking at vehicles. So he'd call me over, what do you think of this truck? And what do you think of that truck? And I tried not to look at the price tag and I just looked at the truck and said, oh, it's great. And, that's a nice truck. And So one day he came down and he said, I've noticed that you've been really calm and agreeable about this whole truck thing. And, that's just not really like you. And then he says, so who are you and what have you done with my wife? So, so I just knew then that he liked the change. And it was just a positive move for our marriage and our relationship, because my, putting the grips on the money just caused so much problem. Yeah. So much tension.
So what is your marriage like now?
Oh gosh, Laura. It's so peaceful. Yes, it's so peaceful. And I do not have weekends blowing up anymore. And I am so grateful for that. And not having to deal with the walls of silence and the days of trying to patch things up. And, once I started respecting him and relinquishing control, the anger, he just stopped being angry at me. He was angry because he wasn't being respected, and he was angry because I was trying to, manipulate him. And when I stopped doing that, he stopped being angry. It was just great. Now too, I am his safe place to share his heart and his mind with, because I'm not critical. I'm not telling him what to do. I'm not offering my opinion all the time. And so he feels very safe in just telling me whatever. And yeah, I'm his person, his come-to person to tell things to and talk to things about. And, he loves to take me out to eat, and I let him, and he takes me to some really nice restaurants, and, is buying champagne and wine when we celebrate things, and, seafood. And it's just, I guess too, for me, it's nice that since I don't worry about the money anymore, I can enjoy it. Before, because I was so fearful about the money, even if I went ahead and agreed to go out and do something like that, I couldn't enjoy it because I was like, oh, we're spending all this money. And now I can just enjoy it and not be fearful and appreciate it and just have a good time and just receive it.
Wow.
So yeah, it's great. And the affection is up. We cuddle on the couch, we cuddle in bed. I wake up to kisses. There's some passionate kissing going on, not bad for 34 years of marriage. So,
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just excited about that. And I am happy again. I'm happy a lot. Most of the time I'm happy. And just having what I learned about owning my own happiness was huge too. And self-care was just a foreign concept to me. And I'm choosing to be happy and doing things I enjoy and not feeling guilty about it and not feeling guilty about spending money on myself. And it's just been huge for me, and has just made a big difference. And so, I'm happy. And I think too, I'm happy because I feel empowered. Life happens and hard things happen still, and things happen in his job, and he's not happy about it, and he's frustrated. But now I have the skills and the ability to know how to handle it so that I can maintain the intimacy. And that is huge. That is just so huge to me. And that alone makes me happy, so that I feel equipped to handle whatever happens.
Do you feel like this is a big personal accomplishment?
Yes, I do. And a lot, it's just been so transformative for me in that I'm doing things that I never thought I would do before, like just being here talking with you. Just never imagined that I would do something like this. And just the personal growth that I've experienced of overcoming some fears and thinking more positively and taking care of myself. And I've, started volunteering and meeting other people and just becoming my own person again. I love it. And it's huge. And it's just been very transformative for me. So,
And you're a relationship coach now also, right? This made such a big difference for you.
Yeah.
So give us a tip. So a woman who's listening thinks, gosh, my husband's negative and angry. We don't have enough money. What would you suggest that she do?
Well, like I said, I was just convinced that my husband was the one who needed to change. And I think it was just the big turn in the road for me, was that I realized that I needed to change. And then realizing that I actually had the power myself to transform my marriage. And I could do it by changing myself and becoming my best self. And so for me, that happened by reaching out to you and getting your book and becoming a VIP member, and then jumping into coach training and getting that support and getting, like I said, your choosing faith over fear was just huge for me, and just finally realizing how I needed to change. And so it would be that you can do this. You can do it on your own. And you have the power to have your miracle, the marriage that you want.
I love that. And let's say you could go back in time and talk to Shelly before. What do you think you'd say to her? What do you know now?
I think I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be so fearful. Trust that, because I just realized I never even thought of myself as being a fearful person before. But once I got into this and started seeing what I was doing, it's like, gosh, I'm afraid about a lot of things. And that ended up playing out in my disrespect and controlling. So it would be, don't be afraid and trust your husband. Yeah.
And Shelly, you've shared some really personal stuff. It's a riveting story. I love hearing your story, but what has you be willing to share such personal details with us?
Well, one regret that I do have is that, I wish I would have learned all this so much sooner. So much sooner. I mean, the first 25 years of our marriage was fine, but even looking back, I can see where there were flashpoints, and a lot of times it was about money, or it was me being disrespectful. And, I regret the lost time. I regret the lost intimacy. I regret what could have been, because it could have been so much better if I just knew. And so I feel compelled to share with women so that they can have their transformation sooner rather than later and not have those regrets.
You sure are a testament, though, that however many years you've been married, right? If you've been married 4 years, it's not too late. It
isn't. No, it isn't too late. And I got how many, who knows how many more. And I'm just excited, and I know that they're going to be good. So, yeah.
Well, super inspiring. Shelly, thank you so much for sharing your wonderful story of how you made your angry husband into you made your whole house peaceful, it sounds like. Playful. Mm-hmm. And you're having these deep conversations instead of blowing up every weekend. It's really great. Congratulations.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you so much. You just huge part of it. So very appreciative.
If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes. And now it's time for the worst relationship advice of the week.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that's got me apoplectic this week is that if you're uncomfortable about something in your relationship, you need to speak up about it and address it so you don't become resentful. And I want to thank the alert listener who sent this to me. This is advice I love to hate, and I love you for sending it in. So thank you. We're big on privacy around here, so I'm not going to say your name, but you know who you are, and so do I, and thank you. Now, if you hear some terrible relationship advice and you send it to me, you too could get an anonymous shout out on my show. So keep it coming. So what could possibly be wrong with speaking up when you're feeling uncomfortable in your marriage? Or let's say you feel you're compromising more. Shouldn't you stand up for yourself and point that out before you become resentful, and then the resentment turns into contempt and eventually all-consuming hatred? This really sounds like a good idea, right? Well, if you're anything like I was, you've already tried this many times, and it didn't get you to snuggling or laughing together or having hot, passionate sex or deep conversations or getting more help with the housework or any of the other things that you want out of being married, right? Any of the other things that you're looking for in your relationship. And that's because this advice is an engraved invitation to criticize and complain. And no couple ever got happier that way. As Dale Carnegie says, any fool can complain, and most do. But how are you ever going to stop suffering and get what you want if you don't speak up? Well, here's the $1 million answer to that $1 million question. This is a thing that broke open the whole mystery of life and changed everything in my marriage and thousands of others. So you ready? Write this down, actually, if you can. Instead of complaining about what you don't want, figure out what it is you do want. I'm going to repeat that just to make sure you didn't miss it. Instead of complaining about what you don't want, figure out what it is that you do want. See, complaints are just lazy desires. Instead of talking about what you don't like and how unhappy you are, consider talking about what you do want and what would make you happy. Maybe you're unhappy because you're doing more laundry than he is. Okay, well, what is it that you want? Maybe you need some self-care. Sounds like maybe you need a break or a nap or to have coffee with a friend. Once you figure it out, you may even be able to give it to yourself what you want. He may not even need to be involved. Maybe you want the laundry done without having to do it. You could express your desire in a way that inspires him and trigger his hero gene about that. But standing up for yourself by complaining or criticizing will never trigger his hero gene. When I used to do that, I ended up being a porcupine wife that my husband just wanted to get away from. And that made me even more mad and upset than I was already. So for that reason, the advice that you need to speak up when you don't like something before you become resentful is the worst advice I've heard all week. Be sure to listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll show you how to manage your man's midlife crisis. I hope you're having lots of fun, even though there's a pandemic, like when we ordered a pizza delivered to our garage. We closed the garage door and then we were like, now how do we eat it without touching it? So we didn't think that one through.